Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
Hey, John.
How are you, man? How's it going?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm great, dude. I'm so pumped to have you on the show. So I've been excited about it since I asked you to do it. So
No, that's nice. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. It's a true joy. And so I just listed. I said you were the co-chair of the California Rights Watch. You were part of the Cult Awareness Network. You're on a death penalty focus group, and PETA gave you a humanitarian award. And I'm just wondering, are you planning on stopping making the rest of us look bad anytime soon?
I do what I do. People,
okay.
People want to acknowledge it sometimes, but that's not part of
it. No, I hear you, man. It's incredible because I was doing some more reading up on you and stuff like that, and I'm always curious when people in the arts, at what point they kind of get into the kind of activism that you've been doing. But you've been doing it even before you were well known, right?
Yeah. I started, I guess, in the early 60s, when things were happening. It was a Black Revolution, Brown Revolution, Gay Revolution, Women's Revolution. There was a lot happening. So you either were awake or not. And I tried to be.
Is it something that you see kind of like a correlation between that and what's happening now? Because it seems like a lot of the same kind of young people are starting to get involved, and people are starting to wake up, and it's either like a do or die kind of situation where, like, hey, you're either paying attention to what's happening and you need to speak out, or you're blind.
Yeah, indeed, and you're quite right. But it's more exciting now because somehow I think the George Floyd thing really got people. Somehow people have identified in a way that before, it was a different kind of country. There was a difference going on, and the revolutions were true revolutions because people didn't get it. They didn't get that Black people had been discriminated against and needed to be understood. They didn't get that women were boxed out. There were just it was just a different time. And today, for I don't know all the reasons, but for a lot of reasons, people are waking up. There's this whole woke concept. I guess it's happening now, but people are really waking up now and recognizing, and it's really exciting for me.
I feel the same way, and I think it's hard to talk about it in terms of like a silver lining on the on the pandemic. You know what I mean? Because a lot of stuff, bad thing happens during this, pandemic. People have gotten really sick, and some people lost their family members. But if you do have to put one on it, it's that it seemed to give the country a lot of time to finally do what they felt was necessary to be done. The protests, people weren't working, people weren't beholden to anything in order to survive at the time. They couldn't go out. So they just became more aware of everything that was going on, and they finally got to do something about it. And that's kind of the way I've been trying to look at it.
Well, that's interesting. There's so much negative about the pandemic that this has been sort of in spite of it. But as you say, if we can look for a silver lining in it, this may be it. That it really required, kind of forced a sort of openness or willingness to look at least and perhaps understand.
Yeah, it's insane too. And so were you protesting a lot when you were younger? Did you go out to some of the protests?
When I was younger, when was that?
Hang on, I think I have a timeline around here somewhere. No, you're still young now, but yesterday, the day before.
Yeah. I was one of the people in the marching against the Vietnam War. I was one of the people marching. Nice. John Kennedy was assassinated. I got involved with an organization trying to figure out what really happened. And those were in the 60s and the 70s. This Vietnam War sort of carried through, Yeah, but early on, I was as unconscious as most people. I didn't know everything that was happening. I didn't know why it was happening. For me, it was, how do I make it from one day to the next? And am I doing what I should be doing? Because I was just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of a shame that some of these kids who, I mean, it's cool to see like so many, people who are like super, super young getting involved in politics, but it's almost kind of sad because you're like, man, they should be doing kids, you know what I mean? They should be out doing, they shouldn't be speaking in front of Congress, or having to speak in front of Congress at that age. I'm thinking of the Parkland students who were amazing, by the way, who have been fighting for the gun laws and stuff like that. But on one hand, I'm always like, my God, like if I had to do that when I don't know that I would have been able to do it.
Yeah, no, you're right. That was, when I was in high school, go put me in front of anybody and say talk. I don't think so.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
And some of these kids, I quite agree with you. These kids are really heroic.
Right.
What they're doing, the way they're going about it, they're classy, they're smart, they educate themselves, they know what they're doing, and they're willing to take the risks. And there are big risks involved.
They're absolutely. I mean, as a community, I was posting stuff during the pandemic or whatever, and I couldn't believe, you get like weird comments and stuff like that over and over again or whatever, but like legitimate death threats or like threats against your career, or whatever. And I'm like, and it's weird too, because it's like, they're unidentifiable people, you know what I mean, online. So you're just like, I don't know who you are. You got no name. You got no, I don't know if this is real or if it's a bot. Right. So it's just insane. You're like, I don't want to pay attention to it. And then on one hand, you're like, I should probably be paying attention to these on some level.
And you can't help it. I mean, on some, you're aware of it. There's always that sense that somebody's behind the bush or behind your back or in the building behind you, or one of those things.
I was thinking more like they were going to hack into me. I didn't think they were actually following me, but thanks. Now I didn't think of the behind the bush thing until you just said it. So that's going to be fun going for a walk tomorrow and the next day. It's just starting to get nice out. You had to ruin it for me. You're like, everywhere, John. They're everywhere. That's my friends and I did a little protesting when we were younger. One of my best friends and I, George Bush was running for his second reelection, and he decided to come to town, to our town. And we had a very like, oh, not in this, you know what I mean? This is our town kind of an attitude about it. We went to protest, not thinking or realizing at the time that we lived in the only, we grew up in New Jersey in Ocean County, which is the only Republican county in New Jersey. So, but like, we were 19 and dumb. So we were like, we made signs and we're like, this is going to be great. We're going to, we're really going to stick it to them about the Iraq war and all this other stuff. And we got there and we were the only two protesters with signs. And it did not go well. They made us tear them up. But oddly enough, I made us hide some in our sweatshirts. So when we got into the building, we were just like, like unfolded like another sign or whatever. And then more people came over to get our stuff. And then, I jokingly said to him, we're here. We may as well get thrown out. I wasn't really being serious, but we decided when I think his daughters were there too, and they were going to come up on, like, they had a bunch of people that were there. So his daughters walk on stage, and I noticed like two guys flank me and my friend that were like dressed down, but like we lived in the town long enough for me to realize like, they don't look like people from my town. So they're being really obnoxious and like loud and stuff. And then, so he shouts something and Secret Service grabbed us like toot sweet.
Really?
We got detained and told we were put on some kind of, we were 19. So we got told we were put on like a list. So we were a little paranoid or whatever. And my mother and my stepfather was the chief of police. And they were at a Halloween parade. At the time. And so my mom just randomly texted me and she was like, we didn't really tell her we were going to do it, but she was like, hey, how's the rally going? And I was like, well, I was like, we've been detained. And then she was like, why? And I was like, well, and then, but it wound up being okay, except for the fact that we wound up in the paper the next morning and my friend's parents are like really strict. So my mom saw it first. She like knocked on my door and was like, you got to call Sean immediately. And so I called him and we went and collected all the papers in his cul-de-sac and I drove him back to college the next day. like 6 o'clock in the morning.
I,
So that was my one. I've done other protests, but they've gone civilly for the most part. That was the only one.
But you're on George's list, huh? That's nice.
Apparently, I'm on a list. I know. Every time I got pulled over after that, I was like, "Oh God, they're gonna know," and then no one ever cared. So, did you ever get in trouble for protesting and stuff like that?
I never got arrested.
Never.
I mean, actually, I got photographed. I found out later somebody involved a lawsuit against the police, and an attorney contacted me and he said, "You're one of the subjects of this investigation. Do you want to have your name involved just so you can protest the fact that
oh my god
you were surreptitiously photographed and listed and investigated?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Wow. Yeah. I mean, that was the Vietnam War. That was
yeah. Well, you were a big opponent of like the Iraq War and stuff like that too. Like
we started. Robert Greenwald and I started a group that ended up being called Artists United to Win Without War. It was funny. It's one of those things, we said, we looked at each other and said, we really don't want to start another organization. We really don't need another organization.
Right.
Somebody's got to speak out about this. This was before the invasion. And so we brought in a bunch of experts and talked to a bunch of people, and they were all fired up, and nobody wanted to actually organize.
Right.
So we got people to make a statement, and we got press, and we did a lot of hits around the country, interviews on various shows and stuff, just trying to say, there's another side to this thing.
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't succeed. He went ahead with his invasion, and a lot of people were murdered.
Yeah, and that was the time I think I fully became aware of like how active you were in politics, stuff like that. Because I'd always been a fan of like your TV stuff and movies, and then but then I saw you, opposing the Iraq War on TV and going around with other celebrities and doing that kind of thing, and I was like, oh my god, I had no idea that was going on. But it was kind of influenced like my direction and where I was going in that kind of way, because my friends and I felt the same way, but there was a whole lot you can do at that point, for us,
the day, 15th, I want to say, I'm not even sure what month it was. We were part of this demonstration that was worldwide against the invasion of Iraq, and he dismissed it as a focus group. He said, the press pushed him, and he said, "No, I don't pay any attention to focus groups." There were millions of people in the streets,
right?
And not only in the United States, around the world,
right?
Nothing. So I'm touched that you said you were affected by it and wanted to get involved. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was hard to figure out how to get, because when you're that young, like that was another thing. Like I feel like for some reason my generation just had one thing after another. We were in high school when 9/11 did happen, and then everything kind of shut down for us. We couldn't go on school trips. Everything, there was like a little bit higher security around. That's all the stuff that we had noticed when we were there. And then of course the war started, and everybody kind of got involved in politics for better or worse. And again, I lived in a predominantly Republican town, so it was like heavily leaning towards that. And my friends and I kind of felt like we were part of like we had sister high schools. So one of the high schools that we were at was oddly enough the liberal one. We had a couple conservative teachers who were the football coaches, shocking. And then we had but I had some great teachers who were very left leaning and open minded, and one of them I still talk to this day. She was learning like her 10th language, I think. She was our world lit teacher. So we had a lot of influence, but it felt like there wasn't a lot we could do. But we were just staying informed was all we could do. And the organization that we were a part of.
That was something, because they wanted you to think there was nothing you could do. And staying informed was the single most effective thing you could do at that time, because others were without any ammunition when you had the opportunity.
Right. And we also had like the Daily Show and stuff like that too, which I feel like was a large part of, we all grew up on that kind of thing. Yes. So it was kind of interesting too. And one of the things I got to give you definite props for, because again, you've been an opponent of Trump's as well. And you went on Tucker Carlson's show.
Nasty place to be.
So I watched it when it happened. And I don't know how you kept composure, because we all know what he's like, but you nailed it. I mean, you answered every question. You stayed focused, didn't take any of his bait and his dumb, smarmy face. Like you did. Like but I don't know how you did it, because I was watching it and I was losing my mind.
I wasn't satisfied with what I did, so I appreciate your saying that. But
wow.
he is really he's really a rat.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he's intelligent enough to know what he's doing and how much harm he's doing, and he does it anyway. And it's all about, I guess, getting over on people and getting rich and promoting his white supremacist line. It just is disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is infuriating too, because you can see what he's doing. I can't imagine what it's like being in the room with him, because you can watch him and see what he's doing. He's talking a little bit, like his mic's always set up a little bit louder than the guest, so his voice is always, you know what I mean? It's all tricks and it's all show, you know. Yeah. So you're like, oh, that's so annoying. So that's driving me crazy. So there's that going on, and then and then he's twisting everything you're saying at the same time too. And the focus thing you have to do, which I thought you did extremely well, is just you stayed on point and stayed on your message. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you only have a limited amount of time.
Yeah, they limit you very seriously, and that was the campaign, to try to talk the electors into not voting for Trump.
Yeah,
we knew it was a losing effort, but at least we wanted to take this last shot.
Exactly.
Of course, he was not willing to accept the validity of the point. And I just said, this man has no experience. I don't have to go through it again.
Yeah.
He has proven that we were right.
Right.
He has demonstrated his ineptitude and the ugly side of his character, the ugly sides of his character, and the damage he's done is horrific.
It's got to be a double-edged sword, though, because do you look back on that and feel somewhat vindicated? You're like, I've told you, or is it like you're like, I kind of wish I was wrong, because it was 100% right.
No, God, yeah, no, it's scary, and we really felt. I mean, a lot of us really felt helpless in the face of him, and you do everything you can, get out and make people know, let people hear that there's an alternative.
Yeah. That was you're absolutely right. And that was a thing I think I saw, again, trying to look at the positive side of it. A lot of people, I think, spoke out that never spoke out before, even like friends that I had that don't usually dabble in that kind of stuff. Just at some point felt like I gotta speak my piece here, because this is beyond politics and insane. And that was the kind of, a bright side I think I saw to it, where I was like, wow, people are actually seeing how dangerous this is and trying to do the right thing. And also, I was in a store today and I saw, it's just like a weird thing. I don't know if this happens to you, but I was in a store today and they had, I was looking at the back of the register, looking at everything that was going on, and they had like a Trump bumper sticker. And I really liked the place I was in, by the way. I was like, oh, these seem like nice people and they're doing a thing or whatever. And then I looked by the register and I saw that, and I swear to God, it was almost like the equivalent of seeing, like, I hate to say, but like almost like a Nazi propaganda. It was propaganda. Yeah. And I got like, I cannot come back here again. You know what I mean? And then I was like, maybe it's not theirs. And I'm like, why wouldn't it be there? I'm trying to like rationalize. I'm like, maybe it's really not theirs. Maybe it fell.
I hope it's not theirs.
Yeah, right.
People, yeah.
And then I was like, how do I politely ask? Like, I'm like, do you guys dabble in white supremacy, or what's going on here? Is there a code word?
Yes. Excuse me. I was thinking of coming back to do business here again, but can you clarify for me one thing?
Yeah. One thing I love doing is if they are a business that's like a local business or whatever, and I go, what's your Instagram? I'll follow or whatever. And I know if they don't like follow me back or whatever, it's because they can clearly see where my like, I don't hide anything. So like, 2 posts in, you're like, oh, okay, he's not a Trump, not a Trump supporter at all. And there's BLM stuff everywhere. So yeah, but I was like, let me just get out of this store. Yeah. But is that ever weird for you? Like, do you feel like that's kind of visceral response when you see it?
I am so, I guess, wounded, I have to say, by the fact that 74 million people still voted for this poor sick man
Mm-hmm.
when he tried to run again for re-election.
Right.
So I mean, I've been working on a thing about trying to write an op-ed piece about is mental illness contagious?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the Cult Awareness Network. I did some work with the Cult Awareness Network years ago before Scientology killed it. Thank you.
Right. Wow.
And the whole concept of cult mind grabbing kind of was hard for a lot of people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And only in later years now have people begun to be open, a little more open to the idea of cult. But now they refer to the Trump cult all the time.
Yeah.
But nobody really means cult, but it's the best way they can figure out how to describe what has seized people's brains.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of my best friends grew up Jehovah's Witness, and to get out of that kind of mindset, and like he and his brother and sister got out of it, but basically like seeing these signs and everything going on the 4 years, like literally was driving him crazy to a point where he was like, he could see all the steps, he knew all the moves, he understood what was happening, and there's some level of sympathy that you have to have for people that are trapped in a cult, and then there's the other people who I feel like for me, it was always like, okay, do they know where they are, or are they part of it willingly? You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of, people I knew, especially on the older side, got swept away in a cult. You know what I mean? And they didn't know any better, and they thought they were getting help, or they were suffering for healthcare. Whatever. They just bought this guy's lies, and I feel like there's just a lot of those other people were okay with it, no matter what happened. And that's the part that I can't reconcile in my head.
It's tough. It's very tough. I was watching an interview yesterday, a short interview between a reporter and a woman who's one of these apologists. And there's just a blind spot. And if you get close to that, everything shuts down. And they otherwise they just eat it up word for word and excuse for excuse and lie for lie. And it's just it's really frightening that normally, what we would think of as normally relatively intelligent, thoughtful, sensitive people step over that line and become sucked in. I find it really scary.
It is very scary because it's one of those things that we were told could never happen again. We're like, no, it's why we learn the history. And then you're like, what the hell's going on? You're like, I learned in school this could never happen again.
Yes. Well, part of that is, that's the never again is the Jewish credo from after the Holocaust. Never again.
Yeah. Exactly. And then now we're like, it's weird because it takes on different forms. Like people have, I'm worried about the after effect, you know what I mean? Like, cause the Democrats are, I'm a, registered Democrat or whatever, but they kind of drive me crazy in their fecklessness, to a certain, you know what I mean? Like, do you get the same vibe? Because I get it. I feel it a lot. I felt it during this whole run, but anytime they said we got to get back to normal, I always kind of wanted to be like, normal's how we got Trump, just a heads up. Let's talk about more change. And then, but I'm worried about the next run, because the next guy that comes along that's like him, oh man, is he going to be good at what he's not going to tweet, and he's not going to there's not going to be the obvious signs. Do you worry about that? Do you think about that at all?
Sure. The Ted Cruz's and the Josh Hawleys,
Yeah. Ted Cruz.
Followers. I worry about that a lot. I think, and one of the things, I've given my audience away.
No, don't go.
One of the things I've been saying to folks for a long time is the people in the rest of the world, there's a history to this. But the people in the rest of the world watched. They understood that we elected this guy.
Yeah.
They now see that we didn't re-elect him, which is good. But they always know that we elected him. And that's got to plant a seed of distrust or fear, combination thereof, in their minds about who the U.S. is and what the U.S. is, and it's going to take us a long time.
Yeah.
To repair that.
It planted it in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Like New Zealand's looking pretty good right now. You know what I mean? Like it's, I was like, are they?
Have you been there?
I have not been there. I would love to go. Have you been there?
Wonderful. Yeah.
Oh,
it's great, fabulous, wonderful country.
Wow.
With terrific people, wonderful people.
If you go back and you got room in the suitcase, I'm very tiny.
Okay.
I'll fit right in. Yeah, no, their president knocked out the COVID stuff pretty quickly and dealt with it. Like, I was like, what are they doing over there?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive. But now, I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like a little bit? Is there, do you feel like more positive about the way we're headed now? Because I think I remember in one interview you said you weren't really like I don't know if were you a supporter of Biden's in the beginning? I mean, obviously we all are now at this point, but like, no, I wasn't either.
No, I supported Elizabeth Warren, but
right.
And I know Bernie a little bit, and I think he's wonderful, and I'm thrilled now that he's heading the budget committee.
Yeah, it was Liz Warren and Bernie for when they were, side by side. I would have been happy with either result, and I really didn't. I mean, I kind of was like, the Democrats want Biden, it's going to be Biden. But for a while there, I was like, oh, this might actually happen.
You know what's interesting? My wife and I have been talking about that, or have talked about that. I was sort of reluctant about going to Biden, but there was really no choice.
Right, of course.
When he got the nomination. But I have come to think that maybe, just maybe, he is the guy created for this moment in our country. He has that history. He's done all that crappy political stuff. He seems to have been touched and moved by what happened with Black Lives Matter, with George Floyd, with a lot of these things. And it seems to me that he has, I don't want to give him too much credit yet, but
I'm right there with you.
that he has seen a path, and he's willing to go down it. He's done it now with the COVID bill. He's talking about doing it with the infrastructure, or they're not calling it that now, I guess. But what I want him to do is do what he said he would do, which is do away with the federal death penalty and encourage the rest of the states to get on board with that. And he's got and they've got to find a way. They've got to find a way to pass S1 so that we can protect from this crap that the Republicans are doing around the country to restrict voting.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, those are the two main things too. And I'm hoping for police reform and some, the minimum wage stuff and the college debt. There's a lot of stuff on that list that I'm hoping he, holds up on. But you're right. He has, I believe, the empathy. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
So that gives me a little bit more hope too. It was the funny thing to me was I feel like, again, if you're looking for like benefits or whatever, this whole crazy time in politics, the veil has kind of been ripped off where you see how they play the game. And I kind of feel like optimistic about the progressives that are coming in, the people that Bernie like had helped get elected, left behind, and like Warren's people and stuff too, where like people were pointing out the media and stuff a little bit more, as far as like, which is hard to do because Trump was always ridiculing the media and you had to be careful. But I feel like that was one of those rare moments where you were like, he's kind of like, the guy has been manipulating the press even before he was in politics, pretending to be his own, agent and all that other stuff. But I saw this thing that drove me crazy. I don't know if you noticed this during the election. They had CNN had this thing on, and it was when Bernie Sanders was in the lead, and they literally had a headline on the bottom, and it said, "Bernie Sanders or coronavirus can either be stopped." And I was just like, how are you equating the two? I was losing my mind. And then somebody else from CNN, when Bernie came in first and Klobuchar came in third, they were like, you could actually say, though, third place is the new first place. Like, they said it with like a straight face, and I was like,
oh yeah,
like,
so many of the media folks are so stuck in that middle position, you know,
Yeah.
rather than allowing themselves. And some of them, you know, I've met a lot of media people over time, and some are really, you know, good, solid folks, and some are some real pseudo fascists. So you kind of have to watch your.
Yeah, exactly. Where I was like literally watching by myself. I was like, is anybody seeing this? I think I have a screenshot. I think I like took my phone and took a picture of the TV and then, you know, didn't go anywhere. But one of the things I want to ask you, because I felt like we had talked about a lot of activism, stuff like that. So how do you personally, and this is good advice for me and anybody younger who's doing it now too, how do you keep your idealism intact, or does it waver at some point? You know what I mean? Does it get harder as time goes on? Do you see the progress that you've made, or does it just feel like it's an endless road?
Oh, well, I'm an optimist, so I think we're headed. There's a phrase I've used in the past. We're on a journey from the caves to the stars, and there are too many people that want to drag you back to the caves.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I mean, you have to make a choice, it seems to me, and I choose to. It sounds a little self-important, but I think there's an evolutionary process going on, and that there is a tendency on the parts of people to think that we've achieved all that we have to achieve. And I think that's hardly the case. I think that there's a whole lot yet we have to learn, and a whole lot yet we have to come to understand and do, you know, take full advantage of. So for me, it's just, it's a function of living and learning.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it too. And even it may seem, I know what you mean, it may seem self-important, and I struggle with that sometimes too. But when I think about all the other people on the other side who are doing just garbage things in humanity with that level of self-importance, I'm like, we could use a little bit more self-importance on our side for the issues that actually matter. And that brings me to a good topic too, because sometimes, especially now, remember when Occupy Wall Street was going on? Yeah. And I went to a few of those, and but towards the end, because there were no leaders, you know what I mean, it seemed to kind of dissipate. Right. I feel like, I mean, a lot of different leaders have kind of sprung up. We have a lot of people speaking out and stuff like that. But I'm wondering, do you feel like it's heading in that direction now, that there's not really any focus? Because there's a lot of debate with defund the police. I know I use that slogan a lot, and it is kind of antagonistic, I think, but it's cathartic in a way to almost say it, because obviously I feel like, so what I'm getting at is, like, we know what it means, right, when we say defund the police, but maybe the general population doesn't. How do you feel about the slogan like that, or slogans in general?
Yeah, well, slogans are slogans. You know, there are some that are very effective and some that are good. I think that's not effective. Right. I think defund the police gives the other side the opportunity to say, see, they don't want police. They want everything to run crazy, be crazy, and they have got to do everything they want, and there's nobody there to stop them. So for me, defund the police is a mistake. I think reform doesn't satisfy a lot of people, but that's really what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it gives too much opportunity to the other side. Right. That's I just think it's sort of ill-advised in that sense. But God, I mean, it's hard to think of anything else when you see what happens in Virginia, and what happens in Ohio, and what happens in Minnesota, and it's just and South Carolina. I mean, it never stops.
Right.
And it feels like it's never stopping. But I think my personal sense is that Trump gave permission for people to express and be proud about their worst instincts and their worst impulses and their most base fears. And the other side is responding in kind. Black Lives Matter. I remember Bernie Sanders saying, when he was first confronted by Black Lives Matter, he said, all lives matter. And they said, No, you don't get it. For people to say, well, of course, Black Lives Matter, but it's not, of course, because for Black people have been told all their lives that they don't matter.
I didn't know Sanders said all lives matter. Did he? When did he say that?
I saw him at a rally when he was first confronted, when Black Lives Matter was first being kind of overt. And two of the women who I think were the founders of it.
Oh, right.
They confronted him and he said, of course, but all lives matter. But
right.
And they were saying, no, you're not getting it. And,
right. And then he changed it. Yeah. It was a hard thing to swallow for a lot of people, which is kind of funny because I feel like, I don't know if you feel like this too, but like, some people do need a second, which is, I feel like this country is not, I don't know if it's because of Trump that we don't seem to have the time or patience to let there be some kind of turnover. But like sometimes people do need a little time to catch up. And I'm at fault for doing that too, where I get very quick to anger, where I'm like, how have you not been paying attention? Like, what do you mean you need time? Like, it's such a simple issue. But the Black Lives Matter stuff, I mean, it does seem kind of obvious. And there's a million different ways to explain what it is, and it still seems like they don't get it. I feel like the other side's better at slogans than we are, or at least just.
Sure they are.
And do you think that's because Democrats are more fractured?
I don't know. Slogans are easier, And,
they are, yeah.
And you can touch hot spots with slogans and just keep people riled up, and it works for those folks. Mm-hmm. They like to get us riled up. They like to get me pissed off, and I get that way,
Yeah, me too.
But then I'm at my worst in a debate when I'm angry.
Yep, me too.
So I try to kind of put a lid on it and say, okay, let me just work my way through this. It's tough.
That's why I was impressed with that Tucker Carlson interview you did, because I was on the other side of it, losing my mind, and you were just like focused and responding, and I was just like, oh my god.
I mean, he's dangerous. He's a nasty man, young man, and and younger. He gets younger all the time, and in terms of his,
he's just feeding off the youth. Somewhere there's an aging painting of him in an attic, and we just find it, everything will be solved. I have a thing. So like there was activism for I struggle with this kind of thing, and I'd love your opinion on it. Just activism when it comes to people making a profit off of it seems to. I seem to have an issue with it almost now more than ever. So, I don't know if you know, are you on Instagram at all?
Yeah, I'm not. No.
Okay. Probably for the best, by the way. So, but, I mean, that's where I have a lot of my followers, and I post a lot of stuff. And during this whole thing, it's where I get any message out that I want to get out, especially for Black Lives Matter and stuff like that too. There's a group out there, another Instagram account that amassed this crazy amount of followers, doing a lot of woke stuff or whatever, but curating material. So basically taking what people like me who are verified or whatever, or kind of in the public eye, and posting their stuff. And on one hand, I thought, great, message is getting out there. That's awesome. On the other hand, like maybe 6 months into it, they started making t-shirts, and then and then I kind of was like, well, I want I like that my message is getting out there to the 700K followers that they amassed over, because they would just take from everybody. And then they started asking for money, and they were like, we have a Patreon, would you mind subscribing, because we're starting to do stuff and we can't, we really want to dedicate our time to this kind of thing. And I was like torn between, well, I want to get my message, I want to make sure people are getting the message, but I'm not up for selling this thing either. I kind of just stopped for a little bit because it felt weird. I don't know. Do you feel like that's part of the course for things, or I don't know?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer. I cringe when I see that people are profiting over your idealism or somebody else's sensibility, and they may be saying, we just are trying to help and get the word out there, but it just feels a little stinky to me that they want to make money on it.
Yeah, me too. And it's weird because it feels like all of a sudden there was an industry built on, the last 4 years too, because it was like hating Trump was like now it's a business, and I'm like, that's not the business I'm in. I'm my business is going out on the road and making jokes and doing that kind of stuff, and anything else. So the lines always get blurred at some point, and I don't know if that's something that just happens in activism and politics and stuff like that. If it's something that you have to deal with as it goes on, or what, because it's all new. Not that the activism is new to me necessarily, but like this level of it, because you get a little popularity, and then all of a sudden people start grabbing your words and putting them on stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that.
It's a tough question, because I don't mind somebody writing a book that takes some effort, and if they want to say that they learned this or were there or did that,
right,
one thing, but
agreed.
To I don't know, make a Cupid doll and little image of you and say he said this, and
right,
like to have a copy of him saying this as a bobblehead.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly it though. And I was just like, that's not why I said that.
Well, right.
Like that's the it's so crazy now, and everything gets so clouded. So I'd love to talk about kind of Biden and stuff you would hit on, what you'd like to see him doing. And the one of the things that bothers me is the children still being put in that detention center that they opened up. And the wall, obviously the difference of the wall. Does the hypocrisy bother you? And is there anything like the level of complacency I feel like people have now that have checked out because Biden's in office? My big concern is that we're going to go back. And what do you think we can do to fight like down that level without seeming like, like, here's the thing that I struggle with. It's hard to go, hey, I'm criticizing this guy, but you don't understand, like, to the other side. Like, I'm criticizing him because I want things to be better, not because I'm just unhappy with no matter who's in office. That's ridiculous. Obviously, there's a clear distinction, but do you have like a method you use to fight that kind of stuff?
I think you just have to put people's feet to the fire, no matter who they are, as long as you're specific about it. I think I don't know if I said it when we last spoke, but I wasn't a supporter of Biden's for the nomination.
You did. Yeah, me neither.
And I have come to a place where I think he may be the perfect guy to resolve the issues, because if Bernie had been elected, it would have been Katie bar the door in terms of hatred and explosive nastiness that came out because of he's a socialist, etc.
Right. Yeah.
Or Elizabeth Warren would have been my choice, and she's a woman and she's too left and she this and that.
And she would have gone after the banks, and they would have been like, she doesn't want us to have a successful economy, and
exactly, yeah. But I think Biden has learned a lot, and I think the positions he's taken, as far as I can tell, in most instances have been very positive. It's just there's a kind of, he's an institutionalist, and the institution means you go slow, and it means you have to respect certain people. You don't criticize the people on the other side of the aisle and the bullshit like that.
Right.
So I'm not happy with some of the stuff he's done, and I'm thrilled with other things he's done. And it kind of, I'm at this point, I'm kind of giving him time.
I agree. Yeah.
I think this business on the border, there isn't a quick solution to that.
No.
And I think some of the choices, like he made this choice about leaving the capacity, the line at Trump's, and then he got a lot of heat, a lot of hot feedback, and backed off it. And now he's going to come up with a better number. Well, that's a sign that he's at least listening.
Yeah.
And isn't perhaps as progressive as I'd want him to be under certain circumstances, but he's listening. So
yeah.
You can ask for a whole lot more, but you could get a lot less too, it seems to me.
Yeah. It's the, I don't know if we're ever going to get to a point where we're, a country that support like the healthcare issue, you know, especially everything that's hit during COVID. That's the thing that bothers me the most is like, especially right now, it's that, you know, the healthcare is still an issue, even though we just had a pandemic that proved our country cannot handle this kind of situation. And won't, you know, we probably won't be able to do it again. And then the financial situations, everybody's like the amount of businesses that closed within, you know, the first couple months because they really couldn't afford to stay open. People who couldn't afford to live on, you know, they were living like paycheck to paycheck or whatever. I don't know. I don't see those being, maybe you're right. Maybe given time, those issues will be addressed. I just feel like I have a genuine concern that we're going to go backward as far as like, hey, everything's fine again.
Yeah, no, it's a legitimate concern, I think, and an important one. And I don't, you know, he is not a perfect one. Congress is far from perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
we've got this really odd situation where you got 74 million people who voted for Trump in the last election. Re-elect this guy, and it's except for those for whom it's crassly commercial. For a lot of people, it's just this fear-mongering stuff has brought out their worst selves and is giving those worst selves energy and an excuse to be open.
Mm-hmm.
And it is truly a scary time, that being. So I think Biden, for example, he's talking about doing away with the federal death penalty. God bless him.
Yeah.
And he went further. He said, I will not only do that, I will encourage the states to do the same thing. Well, you know, there's a lot he can do in that regard. And fighting the death penalty for decades. So that's music to my ears. But you got to go further. You know, it can't just be the death penalty. It's got to be prison reform. If we're going to have, we may have talked about this, but
I don't think we talked about prison reform, and that's a good point because Kamala concerns me a little bit, just her record and stuff like that with, being a DA and stuff. And I was less thrilled about Kamala than I was about, it was like blow after blow. When Biden got it, I was like, oh God. And then all of a sudden they elected Kamala and I was just like,
well, we'll see. Kamala, I know Kamala.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I supported her when she was DA because she refused to prosecute a police killing, of a police officer. She refused to go for the death penalty against the perpetrator of a guy who killed a police officer.
Wow, I didn't know that.
She caught a pile of garbage for that. I mean, she was guts. She was gutsy. She was been very open about being opposed to the death penalty, and so I supported her there. I was disappointed when she was AG of California because she didn't do what I think she should have done about a particular case I'm involved with.
Oh, okay. I read up about when she was an AG, and that's the AG stuff is the really disappointing stuff to me.
Yeah, but you know, again, there's an institutional involvement here. Well, there are two things. The one I don't admire is her ambition. She clearly wanted to be moving up. She wanted to be senator. She wanted, you know, from there she wanted. But I do think she's a principled person, and I think she has done a great deal that is admirable, both as DA and AG and as the senator. So I have high hopes for her being around for a long time and doing good stuff. I doubt that she's got the stuff to be president once Biden is either out after the first term or passes or whatever. And that's going to be a hard one for her.
I don't think she didn't win any states. I don't even think she won her home state at all when she ran. Are you able to, so what I'm kind of getting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you're kind of able to separate, I think we all should be, but like what she's, so like, again, I wasn't really impressed with the AG stuff when she was an AG. I did when she went after Kavanaugh as a senator. I thought pitch perfect. You know what I mean? Like that was amazing. I really liked her when she was doing that kind of stuff. Do you feel like we should be separating people from their time doing one thing and how they progress? Because that's kind of the way I look at it. But it's hard for me to separate it when it's like what you said, her ambition. Like, oh, there's a person trying to move up, and how willing are they, like, to do what they need to do once they get what they want?
Yeah, that's the part that's troubling to me. But so far, the pluses outweigh the minuses for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. If that's the case. Are you good? So you've been organizing stuff like this for a long time. Are you planning on doing any more, kind of rallying people together, other celebrities together to kind of, maybe do a final push for the death penalty thing? Or do you feel like you're going to let it see where it goes?
Oh no, I'm the president of the board of a abolition organization, and I continue to work in that community for. We'll continue to until we've ended the goddamn thing. But and there are moments, for example, this case I mentioned, a fellow by the name of Kevin Cooper's been on death row in California for 35 years, and he's innocent. And he was black at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Right.
That's usually how it winds up going.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Or at the opportune time, I should say, for the prosecutors.
Yeah.
But so I'm heavily now, we're leaning on the governor, who has got a tricky situation. He's got a recall movement going against him. And that's going to mean, I think, that he's not going to be as forthright while that's being resolved on some of the issues that I want him to be forthright on. But I do think that he's going to do the right thing. So I'm giving him actually I'm trying to get in touch with his, the people running his anti-recall campaign to see if they would prefer that I not be as upfront about my support for him on the basis of his moratorium on the death penalty, because that may not be what they want to see emphasized in this campaign. So that's, it's sort of crappy, but it's right. It's real politic, evidently.
Yeah. Well, you've been doing this long enough to know your way around that kind of thing. For people who are just kind of, taking a stab at it or whatever, where do you draw the line between going like, I'm going to make phone calls every single day and show up at somebody's door every single day? Do you take that kind of approach to it, or is it more like just polite badgering? You know what I mean? Like, when do you take a firm stance and when do you keep being polite about things?
I think you have to take as firm a stance as you think appropriate, and then listen and see if you get the answer that you want. And if you don't get the answer you want, you have to be more firm. But there's just a lot of give and take in this situation, in these situations. But certain lines just can't be crossed. If he turned around and said, "Screw it, I'm going to kill a bunch of people," then like Barr and Trump did,
right?
You holler.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but if, for example, to go to that situation I just described, if he says, or if his strategists, I'm not even sure what he says, but if his strategists say, it will be better for us, we want to promote the fact that he is in favor of criminal justice reform, but we don't want to get into discussing the death penalty because it's a real hot button issue. In California, you're still below the 50% mark in terms of persuading people. So we don't want to make it a referendum on the death penalty. We want to make it a referendum on his work in general.
Right.
I get that. Because the minute the recall vote is over and he's still in office, I'll be back in his lap.
Right. When did you start was there some kind of catalyst at the point in your life when you started going, this needs to be stopped and I'm going to devote a majority of my time to putting a stop to it? Or was it just like something you just felt passionate about?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's too personal, I understand if you don't want to talk about it.
No, it's personal, but it's all of this stuff's personal. I forgive me if I'm repeating what I said earlier, but I'm
no.
Okay. I was a scared kid. I lived in a household with an alcoholic, tough Irish alcoholic father. And he wasn't abusive in the sense that we think of it as abuse today, but he scared the shit out of me. I mean, I lived in fear that he was going to somehow either shred me or desert me or,
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And it's a terrible thing to say about your dad, but because there were so many things about him that were great. But the overarching thing was that I was just terribly afraid that I didn't measure up to what he expected of me. And I lived with that, and he died when I was a teenager. So I lived with that long beyond when I should have been able to sort of confront him and have that conversation.
Right.
So, so that's the bottom line. The bottom line is that I've always hated, and I didn't realize this until later on, that it was very personal. I've always hated powerful people who take advantage or express their power over people who are less powerful.
Right.
And, me and my dad, in short.
Wow.
But I was going through the motions. I went through the motions for school, and when I got out of the service, into the service and out of the service, and got married, and marriage fell apart. First marriage I had lasted 3 years and fell apart, and I thought what I thought was I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, and nothing's working.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who was involved with an organization said, you really need to come to this place. And it was a place we called affectionately, once I became part of it, the house. It was a halfway house kind of situation, funded by the Salvation Army of all people. And it was run by former addicts, former, people out of prison, people out of mental institutions, a lot of really sort of what my father would have thought of as the dregs of society. And they were extraordinary. I mean, these were some really messed up people and some really gutsy people who were trying to figure out how to have a life instead of dying in the gutter, which is where most of them were aimed. And I was a straight guy, but I was just messed up. So I got to be part of this place, and there's a process you have to go through, which I can describe for you, but it was
you guys.
I'll tell you, because somebody who listens to this may get it.
Absolutely. These conversations are always important.
My friend George said, go to see these people, and it was at the office they had in a suburb of California, of Los Angeles. And I went in, and I was just shredded because of this marriage falling apart. And they said, so what do you want? And I said, I want my wife, I want my marriage, I don't understand, And they said, well, we've learned that no matter what the problem is, everybody wants the same thing in life. They want love, they want attention, and they want respect. What do you want? I want my marriage, and I want my wife, and I'm hurting. And they said, yeah, I've got to get it. But what we've learned working with people is that bottom line, everybody wants the same things in life: love and attention and respect. What do you want? I wasn't getting it. I said,
right.
I'm bleeding all over them.
Right. Wow.
And finally, I don't know how many times we went through this. What do you want? And finally, I thought, okay, they want me to say, okay. What do you want? I said, well, I guess I want, love and attention and respect. They said, I can't hear you. And I said, I said, I want love and attention and respect. And the two of them, one was a psychological social worker, the other was a former drug addict and just a terrible, terrible criminal. But he'd straightened out his life. And they both looked at me again, and they said, I can't hear you.
Wow.
I jumped to my feet and started screaming, I want to be loved. And suddenly I was weeping like a child. And these two guys leapt up and grabbed on me. And as I think about it today, I realize it was the first time a man had ever embraced me.
Wow.
And I was just raw, just wide open, and and they said, here's the house, here's what we do here. People have come here, people out of the gutters, people out of mental institutions, people out of prisons. People have been sticking needles in their arms or blowing shit up their nose, or people who get drunk every day. And we're helping them, we're working with them, and we want you to come there. So I came there, and I stayed there for a year. I didn't live there, but I was an outpatient sort of kind of guy. And I learned how to live. I learned how to respect myself. I remember in group therapy with some really tough guys. This guy said, early up, or one of the early sessions, this guy said, who are you? And I said, I'm Mike. And he said, what the fuck is a mic?
Well,
that's the ultimate question, isn't it?
Yeah. You're like, whoa. What did you remember what you said to him?
I have no idea. I said, oh, man. But I learned, I learned in the process. And it was, I have to say, it was one of the most powerful experiences of my life, being at that point. And a lot of the people didn't make it. A lot of them ended up dead. A lot of them ended up straight. A lot of them worked hard and, made something of themselves. But you saw it all. We went into prisons and we saw what happens there and how dehumanizing prisons are. And it was really a baptism for me, just suddenly to be aware of my place in the world and what I needed. And one of the things I needed was to recognize that I deserved those things.
That's a huge part of it.
Oh man. And that things are available to you. People are available to you.
Yep. It's a hard thing to remember.
Oh, if you have the courage, that what they used to say is people are too afraid to ask.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. It feels so. What before I get into this other thing, I wanted to know what did you do? Would you work on a lot of stuff with your dad with those groups of people and stuff you couldn't say to him? Was it helpful with that mental process?
We did a couple of times, but we didn't do much of that. I mean, my dad was dead by years.
No, I know, but I mean, like, did it help? Like, you weren't able to say the things you wanted to say to him.
Yeah, sure.
That's
but
nice.
most of it was working it out one-on-one.
One-on-one
with the other folks there.
Yeah,
and, that line. Everybody wants love, attention, and respect has been the sort of bottom line for me for all the years since.
Almost like a mantra, almost, and it's a good thing to put in perspective. I feel like people need that kind of, like, whatever it is, if it's that or if it's something else to focus on, to remind yourself that you're just not alone, and the things that you need to make sure you're giving yourself, and that other people are giving you. Because I dealt. So do you? I mean, it's safe to say I feel like you dealt with some bout of depression during that time and stuff, and they kind of helped you through it, right? I mean, is that how you would classify it, or?
Oh yeah,
yeah, because
worthless piece of garbage,
and that's the hardest thing to shake. Like I've dealt with depression, on different levels most of my life, and I just there was a 3-year period that I still can't believe. I can't wrap my head around the idea that I essentially lost 3 years. You know what I mean? I mean, I did a lot of stuff during it, but it still feels like it was time lost because I don't know that I remember a ton of it, what was going on. It's not like I was into drugs or anything like that either. I've never did any of that kind of stuff or whatever, but it was just mental anguish and trying to battle it. Every time somebody says like, you have friends you can call out or whatever, I always want to be like, you don't know it in that situation. So just check on people, because I didn't know it. You know what I mean? Your brain tells you you're alone. It tells you you're worthless. And it's just a spiral, especially I feel like if you're in the arts, like the way, like I think people who are in the arts or artists in general think fast, they think quickly, they think creatively, and that can be this positive, upswing because you create amazing stuff. But if you have a tendency to fall into a pit, I mean, it works the same. It works just as fast in the same way going down. So you don't have a second to breathe after that. But yeah, it was I remember that being a particular rough patch, and then I wish I knew exactly how I came out of it. Because I can't. I would love to be able to, but I just, like, every day it was something. I was out in LA, which, by the way, is the worst place for, I think, to be depressed when you just move out to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody. The sun is taunting you. It's like, it's a beautiful day every day, and it's like, you loser, why aren't you outside? Just like, I don't know. But like, I would have my manager call and be like, hey, you got something going on, or you got to be at this meeting, and it would be like Monday, and they'd be like, all right, I don't want to bum him out, so let me go to this thing. And and then a friend would call or something like that and be like, hey, you doing on Thursday? And I'd be like, I can get myself together by Thursday, I think. Like, so it was like little things like that, but I just didn't, it got really, really dark for a while, let's say, when I was there. And I just thought, if I could just end it, it'd be great. I never, like, it was one of the, I know we're getting into like weird territory, but like, it's one of those things where, like, I don't think I would have ever done anything like that, but I really thought that was a great answer. Like, I was like, if I just didn't exist, it'd be fantastic. But I would have never done it. I realize that now I would have never done it, but I was really just like, I mean, I don't know if I could just get vanished or swept away or like anything.
Right.
But it's funny that you said that you had that support group, because like once I started, like, it's so weird. I hate the phrase, misery loves company. It's a bad phrase for this type of thing, but I think it works, because the minute I started talking to other people, and my friends and I had a roommate for a really long time, and he dealt with depression in a different way than I did, but we learned to just talk it out. And it was and like, guys don't normally talk stuff out, but he and I were just like great at it. We were just like if he was in a weird space, all I would do was just check, be like, are you okay? Are you mad at me? You're not mad? Because I would overthink, like I just said I did before. And I'd be like, maybe it's me. And then I'd be like, are we? And he's like, no, we're fine. I just can't get and I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'll be inside eating a sandwich. If you want one, I'll make you one. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like, and then you just talk forever. And another one of our friends, like, we just started getting this little group where we were like, you think about messed up stuff too? Like, me too. And it makes you feel so much less alone. But it's hard to just get to that point. I did a short film where basically the whole point of it at the end is like, the minute the main character, his depression manifests itself into a puppet that he affectionately calls Duppet. I'm a big Jim Henson fan, and by the way, they saw it and liked it, and so, but COVID happened, yada yada yada. Anyway, I'll cut all this out, by the way. But that was the whole point of the thing. By the end of it, the guy kind of like, he thinks he's alone. He's got this annoying little antagonistic puppet that's his worst fears, thoughts, and impulses. And then his friends kind of finally hound him until he goes out with them to eat. And then as he's at the dinner table, he kind of starts to talk about how he's feeling, and he sees that they have different Duppets, and one's an anxiety one, and one is a over positive, active, or whatever. And he kind of looks around the room, and he sees that everybody's dealing with something, and he just kind of finally feels like less alone about. Oversimplistic, by the way, but a nice idea. But that's amazing that you had that group and that they brought you out of that.
Well, yeah, a couple of things come to mind too. First of all, misery loves company. They would flip it. They would say misery loves company, meaning miserable people want you to be miserable too.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah. And when they said, how are you? How are you doing? They wanted to know. It wasn't just, hey, fine. It was, right. What are you doing, man? And well, I'm coming. I feel like I'm a little more alive here.
Yeah.
Oh God. It's, indulge myself in some of these memories, but it's,
please
stay with you.
Yeah, is it it's weird, like, do you find that because I feel like you're the type of person too, when you ask somebody how they are, you want to know.
Yeah.
And do you find that people tend to get a little weirded out at first? Like, get away, like, why are you asking me about how I'm doing? And you're like, what? It's fine. I just want to know. I care. It's so weird. People are taken aback by it. They're not used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's all good. It's just good to be less alone in general. I'd love to talk to you a little bit about your book if you could talk about it.
Sure.
Because you just did the audio version of it. What was well, I know you did. Which I can't even imagine, like having to do the audio version of your own book. Are you just in your head the entire time when you're doing it?
Oh God, I just went back through, years of things that I hadn't forgotten, but I'd forgotten about the detail,
Right.
and here it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a ball, I have to say.
That's
Then
awesome.
some of it was tough. Some of it was hard
That's
to
what
remember.
Was it harder writing it, or was it harder, to actually having to say the words and reread your own pages? Because writing stuff like that sometimes can bring a flood of emotions back, but then like having to say them.
Interesting. I think it was probably harder to write them than it was to say them for me.
Okay.
Because as I said, it just brought back this flood of memories once I
Right.
saw it and remembered, what I was writing about. So no, it was I kept coming home to my wife and saying, "This is a hoot." I'm just having a great time. And this kid, God, I tell you, I spent some time involved with Central America stuff in the 80s and 70s and 80s, I guess. And I didn't know anything about it, but the technician that was there, I did it in a studio. And the technician that was there, after we got through some of the stuff, he said, "I have to tell you, my mother's from El Salvador." And he said, "She won't talk about it. Whenever she talks about it, she cries."
Wow.
But now I know some of the things she won't talk about. And finally, I've talked about it to her, and she expresses great appreciation for where you were and what you did.
Wow.
So you just think, man, there's just kind of no knowing when what you're doing is having an impact on somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why it's important to get that kind of stuff out there, like especially what you were just talking about before, because anybody listening or anybody reading, again, it's all about feeling less alone, which is
oh boy.
Yeah. When you went out to El Salvador, were you trepidatious at all, or were you just strong-headed and like, we're gonna, this is important and I'm gonna push those feelings down in the back? How did you feel?
Scared shitless.
Oh, were you? That makes me feel, because I was reading and I was like, I would have been also, but maybe he's stronger than me. I don't know. You don't show it, by the way. It doesn't show on you. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I started with, if you know the book, I started working with this refugee aid organization because these people I met were just angelic. I mean, that wrong word, but sort of like that.
Yeah.
And first time I went to Southeast Asia, and then I went to Central America for them, and then meeting people and getting to know what was going on. Then I was asked to go on some of these human rights delegations. You stand face to face with murderers, and they're murderers, and that they're lying, and that your government is supporting them, and you try and figure out how to survive this encounter,
right?
And not that you're going to be killed by them, but how to survive it in a kind of an emotional way, and be able to take that information back and make somebody chew on it, so that they, if you can,
right,
so that they understand the harm, the damage they're doing.
Can you talk about any like close calls that you think you may have had? Because like the all the work that you were doing and the work that you've done, I mean, it's got to piss people off to some extent. And did you ever feel like, oh, I'm not coming home, like this is not going to be good, and then kept going, or or were you all well protected? And
it wasn't so much being protected. I mean, my wife went with me to Salvador the second time, and we went out into the mountains and found a priest who hid us, put us in his
Wow.
place to live, and woke us up in the morning and parted the curtains on the door, and there was a fucking battalion of soldiers out there. The battalion of soldiers that we knew were destroying peasant villages.
Right.
And you said, this is where you don't want to go out and show yourself. So, so there are times when you think, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Here?
Right.
But walking through Sniper Alley in Bosnia, that was scary. We were in the newspaper, which had been put out of business, and we were being shot at.
Wow.
And I didn't. I mean, we heard the sound, but I didn't think they were aiming at us. But this guy said, "Yeah, we got to, get down and go out." Just stuff where you think this really can't be happening. I'm just this dumb guy who wants to see this stuff and go talk about it. I don't want to get in a firefight with somebody.
Right. I was wondering. That's exactly what I was wondering. If you had one of those moments, you're like, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Driving in a truck full of UN supplies for the refugee camp in Bosnia, and going and seeing off in the hill, up this slope, less than 100 yards away, a tank pointed at you, and you think, no, no, he's not. It's the United Nations, for God's sake. He's not. Just. Ooh.
Oh my God. Unbelievable. I would have checked out right there. I'd have been like, okay, that's it. We're backing it in.
Somehow you figure, in Rwanda, actually in Zaire, when it was Zaire, the Rwandan genocidaires, as they call them, the guys who had committed the genocide, were in a refugee camp. And you could see, I mean, the hateful looks of these guys. And you could tell the refugees from the genocidaires, because the genocidaires were wearing military boots. And the refugees were, if not barefoot, they were
right
into it. So you knew there were. You hear about these things and you think, no, man, come on, they're not going to do that. And you keep telling yourself, no, they're not going to do that, and then they didn't, and you feel a little foolish about having felt that they might have.
Sure. I mean, you can't help but think it either. I mean, especially the situations that you're describing, but that's unbelievable. Was your wife ever like, why did you bring me here?
My wife is the most wonderful woman. She never bitched. Oh, the one time though, I will say, we first day in El Salvador, it was my second or third trip, and it was her first. And another friend of mine, Rene Aubergenois, the actor. Yeah, I don't know if you ever even know. Yeah. Rene it was his first time there. Okay. And we got pulled over by the military. Told to dismount, get out of this vehicle we were in. And I thought, they're not going to fuck with us. We're Americans, and this is the middle of the city. They're just not going to mess with us. But I didn't have the presence of mind to tell my wife and Renee. And when they let us pass, they said, okay, you can go. They got in and they said, oh my God, I was scared to death. And I said, I'm so sorry. It didn't occur to me because I'd seen it before. Yeah. And they hadn't. All they knew about was the death squads. And, if you look at them wrong, it's not a good thing. But
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't say these things to make myself out a hero. It's like you do what you. I mean, I was so angry about what's happening in Salvador. I went into prisons down there and talked to a guy who'd been tortured by these bastards. And
Wow.
you just, you walk out of the refugee camps and you know you can do it because you got a US passport in your pocket.
Sure.
And you think, oh God, man, there's sort of no explaining how guilty and how lucky and how angry you can feel about it, and the need to just do something about it.
Was there, when you were talking to these guys, was there anything that they asked of you, or did they just want to tell you their story, or what was there, what was their hope by the end of, knowing that somebody like yourself and other people were coming out to speak with them?
There's a thing I'll never forget. They tell the story of their capture and their torture in a kind of not disembodied voice, a kind of matter-of-fact voice. And it's like, I didn't understand it at first, but I've come to understand it now from, unfortunately, too many of these circumstances. But there's a kind of need to separate yourself, I think, from that experience. And the way they do it is to relate it like it's somebody else had this experience. They poured acid on my chest. You think,
oh my God,
how could somebody do that? How could one human being do that to another?
Yeah.
And this guy, I said, do you know why they grabbed him off the street? And these are, men in mixed garb, but partially uniforms, because the Salvadoran military was responsible for all of it. And he said, I don't know, but I think it's because I'm the president of the teachers union.
Holy
yeah. You think, how fucking dare they?
Yeah. Wow.
How dare they?
That's unbelievable.
Truly.
Yeah.
Truly. But unfortunately, it was a reality.
Right.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I mean, I don't know how you did it, and I don't even I hope you don't think that like I'm like you're not. I don't want to say that you're not. I think of you as a hero, to like just personally or whatever. But I know that's not. You're not coming off as like you're like, hey, I did this and I did that. Like these are just incredible that you experienced all this kind of stuff. And again, like I think I told you before. Now I'm going to repeat myself. But when I was in high school and stuff, you were like one of the first. Because I grew up, again watching MASH and everything, and then I know you had produced Patch Adams and stuff, so I knew who you were celebrity wise. And then when I started getting into politics and stuff like that, you were I was like, oh my God, I know Mike. I know that guy. Like, I can't believe he's doing all this stuff. And then I started to look into it or whatever. And your whole entire, life, your career is amazing, man. It's incredible. You don't see it too much. You don't see people who are in the spotlight as much as you were on one of the biggest shows that's still like of all time. You know what I mean? Like it's still like in the top 5 of, everybody's favorite show. And then just going all over the world, doing all this stuff. It was really, it was inspiring. And
there's Ed Asner and there's Danny Glover.
Yes.
And there's Brian Cranston. I said, geez, I've been
very
lucky. Very lucky.
You're like a gateway drug for other activists. I swear to God, it was like you, and then all of a sudden I was just like, oh my God, there's a whole list of them coming out, and you guys seem to hang out it's like a poker game I can get in on, or Ed Asner is actually coming on end of the summer. I'd spoken to yeah. And he
give him my love, will you?
I will. I'll tell you right now, he scares the shit out of me. So I'm not.
He's a pussycat. He's got this tough front, but it's bullshit. He's a pussycat.
I spoke to him on the phone for like maybe all of 3 minutes because I was calling it because his daughter is the one who books his stuff. So I called to talk to Liza, and he picked up, and I had this mini. Again, I don't. Between you and him, I don't really usually get flustered. I think I told you that in the email or whatever. Where I'm like, been doing stand-up for like 15 years. you just see you get like numb to stuff. You see people and you're like, whatever. I was in a laundromat when I was 20 doing stand up. It's fine. You just don't care. I did a Cluck You once. I don't know if you have those fabulous chicken restaurants out there where they were literally, I was like, is there a stage? And like, oh, you're just going to stand on the windowsill. And I was like, okay. Okay. Like 22, like an idiot. Do I get paid in wings or what's going on? I got him on the phone or whatever, and my brain was like, hey, that's Ed Asner you're talking to. You should say something. And my mouth was like, no. and then he's like, hey, is Liza here or whatever? And I think her husband had answered. Somebody in the background, some guy had answered in the background. I was like, oh no, she just stepped out. And he was like, who is it? And then he was like, who is this? It's like, and I was like, is this Ed Asner? I'm like, I'm sorry, I meant to introduce myself. My name is John Poveromo, and I went, I'm an idiot. And he goes, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Yeah. So it was just he seems very nice, but also I was like, like, I don't know, but I'll tell him you said hi and or whatever. But that's crazy. It's cool that you guys have all that stuff going on, and I feel like it adds a weight to it. I mean, we have, my generation's so screwed. We've got these influencers. We just are. It's just every now and then I'm like, yeah, we're doing good stuff, and then you see like some idiot on TikTok or whatever has got like 3 million followers and they're pushing some kind of sneaker, and I'm just like, we can't win. But it's nice to see you guys doing that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I don't like the idea that if you're a celebrity or if you're a singer or whatever. I have Art Alexakis from Everclear coming on in July. And, I've been promoting it, trying to push it out there. And he's a big lefty, too, which is a central theme on my show. I don't want to I'm not looking to give anybody else any kind of time. So he's coming on and people were like, oh, that's who I want to hear from. And I'm like, you know what? Like it's insane to me that people are so dismissive about that kind of stuff because you can play an instrument or can act. It's like, yes. We have all the colors of emotion. I don't know what you're talking about, and it's weird to me, but you guys, man, you knock it out of the park, especially you just with everything you've done. So it's just nice to have somebody like you to talk to. And are you planning on doing anything? Are you making any big moves I can talk about? Can I get in on a protest? Can we get arrested together? Who's booking the Jane Fonda protest? Do you know?
Jane does that. Jane does her own.
I was like, every time she got arrested on TV, I was like, can I go there? I'm out over here, but not that I want to get arrested, but you know what I mean? Like I've done plenty of nonsense like that, but it's just crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah. No, there's some really, really good folks doing really good stuff.
Yeah. Who are you looking towards politically? I mean, is there anybody that you're kind of interested in? Somebody we should look out for? People should look out for politically.
Well, I'm sort of watching and hoping for people like Ocasio-Cortez and
yes,
and
Ilhan Omar,
the squad. Yeah, they're called Ilhan Omar. I'm supposed to be in touch actually with the Presley about the death penalty. She's the one that's running. Ariana Presley is running a bill to end the use of the federal death penalty.
That's fantastic.
And I got word that there's some desire to have a conversation. So I said, cool, I'd be happy to.
Fantastic. That's incredible. The squad is, those guys are absolutely amazing. And I don't understand the pushback on that. Let me ask you this though. I don't know too much about her. She seemed cool about 4 years ago. Tulsi Gabbard seems to have she's on Tucker Carlson every other day. I don't understand her angle.
I don't either. I thought when she first came out that she was in support of some really right thing.
Correct. Me too.
And then she got weird, and I never could figure it.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Yeah, from my perspective, weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't get it.
I just saw an interview with her on I mean, I try to watch everything as much as it's poisoning me. I feel like it's a little bit of arsenic, you know, to get yourself immune, like a Batman thing, where I'm like, maybe this won't kill me, and I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's killing me. But I watched the interview that she gave on Tucker Carlson, and I, honest to God, at one point I was like, I'm either newly dumb or I don't understand what they're talking about right now, because I was like, it was all over the place and it was real conspiracy. She thinks we're going to war with Russia. That was the whole. And she was like, we're inching toward it. The Democrats want it, and I was like, I don't want it. I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm not a conspiracy guy really, so I don't. I naturally, instinctively don't buy into that kind of stuff. And then, I mean, prove me wrong. That's fine. You know, not you. I mean, like anybody. Sure. Like if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm happy to admit I'm wrong. But
yeah.
Can I get into, before you go? I'll let you go in like a couple minutes if that's okay. Can I get into some weird territory? What do you think about? So I'm not a conspiracy guy, but I am torn with this kind of stuff. Did you see the recent thing with the Pentagon that they acknowledged the UFOs that they had flying over the Navy submarine, or like the ships or whatever, and they couldn't. I know
my son is absolutely on board with all of that stuff.
That's so good to hear.
But I have to say he believes in Bigfoot too. So
tell him it's me. Tell him I'm the big. I haven't I've been out since COVID, and I actually just got a haircut the other day. I can't lie, but I left it alone. But yeah, tell him it's just me. Just wandering the woods.
He periodically sends me some stuff, and I don't know what to think.
Right.
I just don't know what to think. But you say the Pentagon has acknowledged it?
They acknowledged that they're UFOs. They didn't acknowledge that they were aliens, but they are like, we have no idea what these things are. So the weirdest thing is, and this goes back to, I think in 2015, 2019, there were some rumors about pilots who had seen some stuff. There was some footage or whatever. Still trying not to curse in front of you, by the way. They saw some stuff in the sky. And but then the guy from Blink-182, the lead singer, by the way, came out of left field, because who would have thought, right? Exposed it. He leaked these tapes and said they were going on back then. And the Pentagon, about a year ago, I think now, said that they were real. The tapes were real. The recordings were real. And it's literally pilots that are seeing these little tic-tac objects on their radar, and they're moving too fast for them to catch up. And they disappeared, like literally, like they were there 1 second, and their maneuvering capability was weird, and they just got out of there. That was like the first big revelation. But you know, everybody was dealing with Trump, so like I feel like the government was like slow leaking. Like they're like, hey, there's gonna be an alien reveal. Anyway, I don't know if you saw what Trump tweeted. You know what I mean? And nobody was paying attention.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's been weird, and I don't know what to make of it, because again, I'm not a big conspiracy guy, and I feel like if there was something that real, it would be hard for people to keep it a secret. But then Pentagon said something where they were like, this was at Vice News. Pentagon said they are in I can't think of the word, possession of an alien vehicle. And I was just like, they're either this
Area 51 thing.
But like, I have a hard time swallowing that, where I'm like, are they just messing with? I don't understand what's going on anymore. I'm like, do you have anything or do you not? But all this stuff keeps getting slow leaked. The Navy thing recently, you should look that one up. That's the clearest image they have of something zipping by these ships that they can't identify.
My son will know about it. I'll ask him.
Fantastic.
It wasn't one of the astronauts was I thought came away a believer.
Yeah.
I don't know which one, but I don't remember.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but yeah, I've read some stuff about it. I mean, all this stuff is fascinating me, because I'm a very much of like if you can, if there's stuff out there, you can prove it. That's great. But they had that. I'm gonna mess up the name of this thing. They gave it a Hawaiian name. And it's like Uma. I'm gonna have to dub over this, and it's gonna be like me like saying something weird. And but it's like Uma Numa or Uma something like that. Have you heard about that? It's this oblong thing that passed by. Yeah. From deep space.
Wasn't that fairly recent?
That was, yeah, that was like a year or so ago, year and a half ago, maybe. And they, I just amazed. That stuff amazes me because I love when our government and like top scientists are like, I did not see that coming. And they're like, we're like, really? An object was hurtling toward Earth at an untold speed, and you guys, what happened? Lunch break or, yeah. And then they're just kind of assuming what that kind of stuff is. So that always, I feel like you've been around the world enough. You know, maybe you got some insight, you heard something, little whispers, met with an alien, nothing.
People on the inside of the government don't talk to me.
That's actually a great thing. That makes me feel 10 times more comfortable now.
Yeah.
Oh God. Well, seriously, thank you again. I've kept you for longer than I said I was going to. You're an absolute joy to talk to, man. I'm so glad I got to virtually meet you, and you know, one day I'd love to meet you in person, come to a rally or wherever you're speaking and stuff. And
that's very cool, John. Thank you. And
yes,
the feeling mutual. I've enjoyed this. It's been great. Thanks
so much, man. I really do appreciate it. And tell your wife I said bye, and
sure will.
Take care, man.
Dystopia tonight.